Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Film Score podcast. Today I'll be talking with Holly Amber Church. Now, Holly is most well known for composing quite a few horror scores, including her most recent Open 24 Hours, a slasher psychological thriller film. So I thought it'd be quite seasonally appropriate to bring her on, given that Halloween is less than a week away. Of course, Holly composes for many other films as well, one of which is the upcoming film about novelist John Kennedy Toole. Now, if you don't know much about Toole's life and are interested in the film, I would suggest tuning out at about the 35-36 minute mark, because Holly and I talk quite a bit about his life, and although they're real events, you may not be familiar with them. If you don't already, you can also follow me on Instagram and on Twitter, or visit my website. All of them are The Film Score, for more of my thoughts on film music, as well as film music reviews and articles. Now, I hope you enjoyed this interview, so sit back and dive in with me. Holly, I really appreciate you joining me today. How have you been?
Of course, I'm doing good. Yeah, it's nice to get to talk to you today.
I particularly appreciate it because it sounds like you have an incredibly busy schedule for the last few months.
Somehow, luckily, yeah, I was a little worried there'd be no work for a while, but yeah, I'm working on 2 features right now, and I've demoed for a couple other projects in the last couple of weeks too. So we'll see what all happens, I guess.
Nice. Can you share anything about either features, or is this still in the early stages and under wraps?
Yeah, one of them's a drama. It's really, really good. We just submitted it to Sundance. It has Michael Douglas's son in it, Cameron Douglas, and he's very good. He's very Douglas. It's a very, very good drama. And the other one is a horror film, of course. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of like a haunted house movie, but not your normal one. So they couldn't be more different from each other, but I'm having a lot of fun working on both of them. So interesting scores for both of them too, I would say.
Is it tough working on 2 so different scores and films at the same time?
It kind of can depend, but in a way, I think it's creatively refreshing. I might work on one half the day, and it's just a totally different mindset. And then when I feel good about that, I switch to the other one, and it's like, oh, now we're doing this. I think it can depend, but in this case, not really. Like, I'm enjoying. They're so different. Like, I'm enjoying the switch up.
That actually makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I think most people that I've talked to, they have a project, they finish it, and they're on to the next one. So it's interesting hearing having 2 going on, but that makes a lot of sense. Or I'm sure if stylistically they're different, or they're having different themes, I guess it lets you get your mind off of one. Because do you run into the issue of having writer's block?
Not too often, actually, which is very lucky. I mean, early on when I started my career, yes, and like every note had to be perfect and whatever, but now I think I've just gotten to where it's like, you have no choice, you have a deadline, go. So that kind of helps you not get writer's block, because you really can't afford to. If there is like a time where I'm struggling on one of the films, then I can switch to the other one. Then kind of the back of my mind will work out the one I was struggling on while I'm working on something else, and it's like, oh yes, this will work, and then I go back to it. So that can be nice too.
That's got to be almost a necessity, because looking at your credits, you've scored a lot of features and shorts in a short amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's that old adage, I'm sure everyone's that way, where it's like, when it rains, it pours, or, there's something, and then there's like, I might have just nothing for a month or so, and then I'll have 3 projects at once. Like, it's hardly ever just one project at one time. I think I had one summer where I had 6 or 7 things at the same time. That was hard. Yeah.
Are you the type of person where you'd prefer to have 3 projects going on versus like a sparing amount of work?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I would like one at a time, because then I could really focus solely on that. But 2 at a time is not bad. When you start getting into 4, 5, 6 at a time, that's hard.
Yeah, I mean, that's
So, but
crazy.
yeah, I'd for sure rather juggle a couple at a time than have nothing.
I couldn't help but laugh when talking about the 2 upcoming projects, and the second one, you said it was horror, of course. In the works that I'm familiar with of yours and like looking through your credits, it is so horror heavy. How did that happen?
I don't know. Patrick Reynolds, who I've worked with quite a few times, he's one of my favorite collaborators. He had a horror movie Rites of Spring about a decade ago now, I guess. And I don't think I'd really done much, if any, before then. But I was like, oh, that sounds like fun. And we knew the producer on it, my husband and I. And I emailed the producer and said, hey, I saw you guys are doing this movie. I think they were filming it, at the time. And maybe there was an article on Bloody Disgusting or something that I saw. And I was like, hey, I'd be interested in doing the music. And he said, oh, sure, let me set up a meeting with Padraig. So I think we all went to dinner and I gave Padraig a CD with some of my music on it. And he was like, cool, you're hired. We've done 4 movies together now. And I love his movies. They're so much fun. And I think it was kind of that. He gave me the start. And to be honest, like I was nervous because I was like, first of all, I'm a girl. Like, am I going to get overlooked because of that? Like girls can't do horror. And secondly, my last name is Church. It's a really nice last name. Like, I know that was a dumb thing, but I was like, am I going to get overlooked because of that too? She can't do horror. Her last name's too nice sounding. But yeah, he liked my music and hired me. And then I think that's Rites of Spring was what started it all off. And I've done just lots and lots of horror since then. And I absolutely love it. It's really, really fun.
I've got to say that's such a cool beginning. I imagine that's got to piss some people off that you just like you sent an email, had a dinner, and that sealed the deal.
And well, that was the thing too. Like, that's very rare. I fail constantly. I'm always writing demos, always doing stuff, and it's really hard to get a gig. But luckily, there was some Padraig liked my music, and that was it. And we've had a long career together, working together, which is fantastic. And we get along really great too. Like, and I think he gets what I can do, and I get exactly what he wants. Like, by the end of Rites of Spring, he could just make a sound. I went, and I knew exactly what he was talking about. And that's made it going forward on all of our other movies. Just, they're always super smooth, super easy, and we just have fun. So yeah, I can count myself very, very lucky because I think had he passed on me then, I don't know that I would have gone in this horror direction. And it's been very good for me. I always have to credit him with my career, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that film was pretty early in your career, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was very early on.
Given that it was early on, what were you doing before Rites of Spring, and how did you realize you wanted to make film music in the first place?
Let's see. Well, this is going to be a journey. It all started like I wanted to do this from the time I was a little kid, which is crazy. My dad would bring home, this kind of dates me too. I was a child in the 80s, but we had a record player. I think it was my great grandma's record player. And he would bring home film scores on record. I guess he'd stop at the music store or whatever on his way home from work. And one time he brought home American Tail. And that was the one for me that I'd listened to that. And I was just kind of like, whoa, like these cool sounds I'm hearing are different instruments and an orchestra. And that's so cool. And it was around the same time that my mom started my sister and I in piano lessons. She tried all kinds of things with us. We quit everything because I have a twin. We're twins. So of course we had to do some cute twin thing together. It was like gymnastics, singing, this, that. We quit everything, but then piano like stuck. So they kind of happened at the same time. And I started writing little pieces of music when I was a kid on the piano. And anyway, school like everyone else and all that. But like from a really young age, it was like I wanted to write film scores. Yeah, then I went to school, obviously. I did my undergrad at Pepperdine and did composition, and then I did the USC film scoring program. And from there, from graduating, I don't know if this will help any young composers wanting to come out. You think, okay, this is it. I've got my degree. I'm going to be a big film composer now. Like it took like 10 years doing short films, student films. I had all kinds of odd jobs to help pay the bills. I think I was like an audience coordinator for a game show one time and told people actors like where to sit and when to clap. I assisted a couple composers too. I worked for Chris Young for a little
Oh, okay.
bit right when I got out. Yeah, who
I mean,
is
perfect for the horror pipeline
perfect for
too.
the horror. Yeah, he had the coolest studio with all these jack-o'-lanterns and horror things. And I worked for Ray Colcord. He did some TV. I think he did Boy Meets World. He wasn't doing that when I worked with him, but he was fantastic and taught me a lot. And then I worked for Stuart Copeland for a little while too, the drummer for the Police. And
Interesting.
he also does some film scoring and stuff. So, I bounced around, and then I ended up working at a law firm for a while.
Huh.
So I would like work all day, and then I'd come home at night, and if I had a project, I'd stay up all night and work on it and then go back to my day job when the sun came up. I just always kept at it and kept trying to meet people. And, it wasn't one of those stories where I graduated and was immediately earning my living doing film scoring. But I think that is probably important for these people coming out of school to know, like, it can take time and you got to pay your bills. That's how it goes. And then eventually I started getting enough work to where I was able to quit my job and just do this. That's kind of how it started.
It's both inspiring and really daunting because obviously everyone loves the story of working, and achieving your dreams.
Yeah.
But all those obstacles in the time, I'm sure some people
Yeah.
look at and go, wow, I've got to do all that for that many years for the chance to break through. I mean,
Yeah.
that's impressive sticking through it that long.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell everyone, like, there were plenty of times I wanted to give up and thought, oh, this is never going to happen. But I'm too stubborn, I guess, luckily, and I never did give up. I mean, everyone's journey is different. Some people are going to graduate and get a big movie and do great. I think it is important for people to know, do what you have to do, but don't give up. I think Chris Young even said he drove taxis or something when he was first starting out. Same thing. He had to do whatever he could to earn money while he was still trying to break into the business. There's no shame in it. No, everyone's journey is different, and mine took some twists and turns, but I ended up landing back in the right place. Just probably good for those coming out to know.
You see some people like Ludovico Einaudi. I don't know how old he is, but I mean he's relatively young, and
Yeah.
he's won every award under the sun basically.
Yeah, and
Or
doing huge
oh
things.
yeah, or
Yeah.
I mean Justin Hurwitz, who hasn't done as many blockbuster works, but
Mm-hmm.
he did La La Land
La
and
La
First
Land.
Man.
Yeah.
I mean those are big films, and
Yeah.
again tons of acclaim, and I think those were his second and third films he scored maybe.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
so yeah, you see younger people doing that, and you go, oh wow, that's the path I'm gonna take. But
Yeah.
yeah, even
But
though
it's
it's
not
so
like
it's
that for everyone.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And those guys too, I'm sure like, it was their connection. Damien Chazelle that Justin Hurwitz worked with, like, they were friends at college. And then his filmmaker buddy lucked out and got a big film and brought him along. And I think same with Ludwig. So that's great. Like, if that can happen, if say you're at USC like me and you meet a young filmmaker there and they break out really quick and take you along, fantastic. But
I mean, and I
again,
guess
that doesn't always happen.
right. Well, and the other thing with Ludwig too is people really were familiar with him starting at Creed and Black Panther a few years back.
Mm-hmm.
You actually look at his credits, and I mean, he was doing films for years before then too, and
Yeah,
then doing work with Donald Glover and
that's
other
right.
like non-film music endeavors too. It looks like, oh, he just like got big, but I mean it's still the same thing of he did a ton of stuff and it just
Yeah.
took time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just the planting seeds and the getting experience. And I think he's just like an all around great musician too.
Hmm.
I remember Community. He scored Community, the TV show.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I actually heard his music. And I was like, who is this guy? Like, this is amazing. And I mean, it was a comedy, but once in a while they'd have these episodes where it's like an epic battle. So the music was this big orchestral over the top battle stuff or whatever, and it was fantastic. But it is funny because he is really young. So it's like, did he start when he was 12? I don't know. Yeah, he's accomplished a lot of great things.
I actually really appreciate you giving that kind of background and story because it's very good for people to hear that, and I think that's just kind of endemic in film, TV, media in general. Like if you want to be an actor, for instance, even though there are huge actors who are 25, I don't like it. It almost doesn't matter how good you are. Like that's almost not like it's almost never going to happen. It's so rare that it really
Yes,
just requires years and years and having to stay committed.
it does. That's the thing. It's persistence, and they always say being ready for when your big break does happen. But overall, just not giving up. You know.
So how did you keep yourself going and not give up?
Again, for me, I'm stubborn, and I had this dream for like a long time, and I think too, I'm just kind of that type of personality too. Like I made sure I got straight A's in school, and it's like if I set my mind to something, like I'm gonna do it. So I think it was just trying to keep going, and I loved writing music. There's the love of it too, that it made me happy, but I just had to kind of learn to feel the days that were hard, but then pick myself back up again and keep going the next day. And there were times where it was like I was frustrated, and then the next day I'd get a call about a really cool project, and it was kind of like, hey, the universe is telling you to go back. And then there was that sort of thing where when you get frustrated, remember that something good could happen tomorrow. It's that kind of business, I guess. Just kind of trying to look at the big picture, I guess. I mean, it can be frustrating for sure. I will tell everyone that.
Yeah, I bet. I bet.
Yeah, but also glorious.
You also mentioned how when you first had that conversation with Patrick Reynolds, like you were worried that being a woman would be used against you in getting involved
Mhm.
in horror. On paper, it doesn't look like that because again, you've had so much work. But I mean, have you experienced that?
So far, no. Like, luckily, and I don't know if it's because I gained a lot of experience. So, like, it is what I specialize in now. Obviously, if I go after it now, it's like, oh yeah, she's got all these credits. Great, she's great at horror. I think it was just initially that first one, and there was that, and that was like 10 years ago. I feel like a lot has changed in the
Hmm.
last, especially the last few years for women. We've got Pinar doing big action Marvel movies and stuff. I do think that there are so many more women entering the field now and doing all kinds of different cool things. But 10 years ago, I would say I was a little worried that there was still that, oh, they can't write action and they can't write horror and they should just do romantic comedies or whatever. But there's so many great women out there doing all kinds of cool genres. And I really feel like there's been a shift. Yeah, it's not really a problem I actually have ran into, luckily. As far as I
Nice.
know, maybe there's some I didn't get because of it, but no one told me.
Right, and I
So
guess you'd never know that.
I would never know that. Yeah. And I would say overall, like the horror community is very open minded, very accepting. It's probably pretty opposite of what outsiders would think about
Hmm.
it. But like everyone's very kind to each other and kind of like a family. And it's good people in the horror community.
It gets shown in some of the films too. So often in movies, the protagonists are so male centric and the female characters are put into these like secondary positions. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you have these really strong female leads for decades in horror.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're always tough. They're always the ones who live at the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think there's some good strong women in horror for sure.
And when you were talking about Pinar doing Marvel films, like again, Hilder winning the Academy Award for Best Score last
Hmm.
year, like that was huge. And I couldn't believe, I think she was the first woman to win in, I don't know if it was like 30 years since like Rachel Portman in the early 90s, maybe.
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah.
I mean, that is crazy.
And hopefully, we see a shift of, again, I think it's just there needs to be more women doing it at that level, and that we'll see more being nominated for Oscars and stuff. It was a good moment, her winning that, and just again showing that we can do things too. But I do feel like I've seen a very positive change the last few years, so that's good.
That's awesome. And because I think for so many people like me who are writing about film music or just interested in it as fans, like that's the
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing that you don't see from that outside perspective. Like obviously I can look at how many female film composers, there are releasing
Mm-hmm.
things or getting nominated, but you don't have any insight into what's actually going on in the industry. So it's so nice to hear, because I'm of the opinion that like the more people that are doing it and the more diverse voices there are, the better it is. Because
Yeah.
while there are decades of great film music that are basically all just white guys,
Yeah.
it's when you have more people doing it, like you're just gonna get better things.
Yeah, you're just going to hear different perspectives, I think,
Yeah.
people from different walks of lives, different cultures that might bring something cool to the table, and I just think it will overall make it all more interesting. Not that the white guys aren't super interesting too, because they are, and a lot of them are my absolute favorites. But I agree. I love hearing diversity, just hearing different perspectives on things.
Your latest film, at least as of recording, is it Open 24 Hours, that came out last month, I think, right? 2 months
Mm-hmm.
ago?
Yeah, August. Yep.
And that was another one with Patrick Reynolds.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine, obviously, for you, it went really smoothly, but what was your approach to scoring it when you were first brought on?
So that one, Patrick wrote the script quite a while ago, maybe actually shortly after he finished Rent to Spring. That one, like, I was very familiar with the script and very familiar with the characters. He kept sending drafts of the script over as he wrote it, and it was one that, like, we wanted to get made for years. Like, I loved the script. There were a couple, close calls of somebody had money and then it fell through and whatever. So it took him a while to get it made. So by the time it actually got made, it felt like this dream had come true, because it's one that we all loved. He's got like a team. Obviously, I work with him as the composer. My husband works with him doing sound, the sound design and mix. And then he's got an editor, Ed Marks. So we're kind of like his post team, the three of us. And we all loved the script. Like it was like our favorite of his. So when it actually got made and we actually were together for the first spotting session, at Ed's house, it was like, oh my gosh, the movie's real. So it was really cool to see it come to life. I love the actors he put in it. Very moody. The main character is Mary, and she's dealing with her boyfriend. Her ex-boyfriend was a serial killer when she found out, and he would make her watch. So she's dealing with all this guilt. He's now in a prison, and she was sent to prison too for a while, but released. So she's just trying to start her life over. It was very important that we had a theme for her. Kind of is melancholy because she's feeling still this guilt and like the town will never forgive her. But she's also having hallucinations. Throughout the film, you're going to see these things that she sees, and are they real or are they not? For that, I used some crazy orchestral stuff, but I used some like sounds of like neon and electricity. Yeah, because I like the idea of the gas station that she works in. You got those overhead fluorescent light fuzzy sounds all the time. And then I just love the idea of the open 24 hours neon sign in the front of the gas station. So some of that plays into the hallucinations and kind of the crazier sound design type stuff of the score. But yeah, that one, like, it was like I'd had so long to digest the story from reading the script over the years that I kind of felt like I knew where to take off on that one.
I think it's so interesting using the literal sounds of some of the like
Mm-hmm.
imagery that you get as part of the score.
I like doing that sometimes when I can. And then, nobody would ever know what it is. But there's
Right.
something nerdy in that for me that I like doing. And it's just, I don't know, it can, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but it adds a new, another layer to it, which is kind of fun.
But yeah, it's so unfair to the listener, because you hear a sound and you go, "Oh, what is that?" And
Yeah.
no one in a million years is going to be like, "Oh, well, obviously that's the hum of a fluorescent light overhead."
Yeah, exactly. No one would know. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. Yeah, there was one I did a few years ago called Clown Town, and I got some balloons from this guy that makes balloon animals at our local farmers market. And I'm like, "Hey dude, can I buy some balloons off you?" And I don't know. He let me do it, but I think he thought it was a weird request since I wasn't a child wanting a giraffe or whatever. But anyway, I took them home, and I blew them up and I recorded like all kinds of weird sounds, like stretching them, hitting them, rolling things on them or whatever. And then I sampled them, and those became like percussive things or stingers and stuff for the clowns in the movie. But again, nobody would ever know. Like if you heard it, they turned out to be pretty cool sounds, but no one would ever be like, that's a balloon. But yeah, I like doing that kind of stuff sometimes when I can.
That's also just got to be kind of a fun thing for you rather than just using a library and using traditional instruments, like
Yeah.
just doing weird stuff that no one would expect and that obviously you've never done before either.
Yeah, exactly. Just trying something, and seeing how it works. Obviously, the library and orchestral stuff and all that will go on top of it too, but it's fun to have a little bit of different elements to play with sometimes.
It's interesting because sometimes for the viewer or the listener, like subconsciously it amplifies the atmosphere without them realizing like, oh, it's this scene is or the music is kind of more effective because of this sampling. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
talking to someone recently who, for a scene that was on kind of a subway, he had recorded the sounds of a subway and then looped it and manipulated it and things like that, so it didn't sound like that anymore. But
Mm-hmm.
I think your brain deep down still kind of makes those connections, and so it has that subliminal effect on the viewer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing too. Like, I think you do want to change it. Again, I'm married to a sound guy. So it's like you don't want it to sound like the sound that's going to be
Hmm.
in there because then they're going to clash. And I know that they hate that. If it's like I put something that's going to sound exactly like what the sound design is going to sound like, they're not going to like that. It is cool to use it, like you said, the subway thing, but morph it to where it doesn't sound exactly like that, or we'll just get lost, or the sound guy will just mute it. So so it's important to think of those types of things too.
How much of that goes into your scoring? Like the thought of, all right, I'm doing this, but I'm trying to make sure it doesn't clash with what the sound is or what the actual underlying
Hmm.
sound might be.
I mean, I try to think about it as much as I can. Again, maybe I'm more sensitive to it because I am married to a
Mm.
sound person, but I think it's just good in general to think. Obviously, I'm a composer. I'm going to think music first. But let's say there's like a creature and their scream is like this high, piercy sound. Then maybe when you're doing the music for you, do something in the lower range. Not to totally overthink it, but
Right.
it's probably everything will fit better in a mix. They'll have to mute less of your stems. But it's just good to think, especially on something like horror or sci-fi, where you might have some interesting sound design type stuff in your score, or there's interesting sound design stuff in the sound design, be it a creature or ghosts or whatever. It's good to, if you can, this is again advice for maybe young up and comers, try to get the contact info for whoever's doing the sound and just talk to them. Say, hey, what are you doing for the monster? What's he going to sound like? And I'll do something a little different in the range of the score. And if you're doing something sort of sound design in your score, which a lot of horror is, see what they're doing. Try to do the best that you can to make sure they meld well once you get to the final mix. I mean, obviously music first, I'll admit, like that's my main thing, but it is good to check in and just be sure. Maybe think of it in a little different way so everything works really nicely together at the end of the day.
I think that's really good advice. When you're describing open 24 hours, you're talking about the horror element, but also the some of the underlying thematic elements too. How do you strike a balance between amplifying both of those in your score?
I guess it depends. It's important, I think, to have the melodic things. Again, it depends on who you're working with, because there's some people who don't want no themes, no melodic, and some people who do want themes. It's like, okay, what's it for? So for obviously Open 24 Hours, it was only for Mary, the main
Mm.
protagonist, and everything else was highlighting the drama and the picture. I think it just kind of depends on, okay, what's going to be score and what's going to be like a prominent theme. There's a movie I did a couple years ago called Ruin Me, and Preston DeFrancis, the director of that, like loved horror from like the 80s and stuff, and loved like themes, like a good theme too. So that one we had quite a few themes, and we really sat down and talked about, okay, we'll have a theme for this character, this character. We had like a mental patient theme. there's this camp that they go to called Slasher Sleep Out, so we had a theme for that. And then it was really interesting. What we did with it was some of the themes started to morph. The main character, we had a theme for her, and then eventually we start morphing her theme with the mental patient theme, and you start to think maybe she's crazy. And it's super subtle. I don't know if people would pick up on it. That was one that was very, very theme heavy, and it was pretty cool what we were able to do with it. But yeah, again, it's having a conversation with the director and what they really want.
I love that because, like I said about the viewer picking things up subconsciously, because a lot of times, even if people don't pick up on it, it's still amplifying it because their brains at least like made a connection between, okay, this theme means this or belongs to this person, this is that. And I think it's such a clever technique to use. The score I always think about is Braveheart, because I think there are a few times where themes will be combined or like literally played over top of one another, and it just creates such an
emotional response, right?
Exactly.
James Horner was like, his theme, I mean, he was like my favorite, obviously, like he's who I almost solely listened to growing up. His themes are just incredible.
And I thought it was funny that the score that you mentioned earlier on was An American Tale. Gosh, I probably saw that movie 20-something years ago, but I actually listened to it maybe a month or two ago. I was surprised at how good it was, especially for a kid's anime.
A kid's movie,
Like not saying that those scores are inherently like inferior or like bad or anything, but I guess for me, like maybe it's just some personal biases I have, but I don't expect that, and so it was like really cool to hear that.
Yeah, it's very lush, thematic, like it's really good. I don't know if you've listened to his Land Before Time from around that same time too, but that one's also amazing.
I was just going through his scores for like a week, just like, one after another.
Yeah,
but that's another one where gosh, I watched that when I was a little kid, and I don't remember a single thing about it, but luckily at least re-listened to it recently.
Yeah, that one's good. That one I watched that one a lot too when I was a kid, but now I can't because it's too sad when Littlefoot's mother dies. I can like start it when it gets to that part, I turn it off. Yeah, it's very nostalgic, I guess, those ones for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's amazing. But you got to think a lot of the kids' movies now, like Pixar stuff, those scores are incredible.
Michael Giacchino's work on Coco, like I thought that was really good, especially use of like, acoustic and flamenco guitar interspersed. Because again, that's an instrument in a style you just don't hear that often in film music. I love it, having played guitar when I was younger, but like I think it's such an underutilized instrument and style, so it's so nice hearing it.
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, that movie was beautiful too. So if you have not seen Coco yet, it's just beautiful the way it's done, and probably a good one for October. It's sort of spooky.
That's true. We had a little tangent, but I did want to ask, with Rue and Me creating that many different themes, when you have a film where you're going to score a few different themes, what's your approach to creating each one and mapping them out?
Usually I like to spend a little bit of time, like the first few days before I even get into it, working on theme ideas. And probably I'll sketch a couple for each one. Like, okay, I'm going to sketch 5 theme ideas for this one theme. And typically it's pretty easy to choose which one's the one. Sometimes the first one I might write, I'm like, well, that's perfect. But I'll force myself to write 4 more just in case. But yeah, it's just, and it's hard to even explain how I know what's right and what's wrong. It's just like a gut feeling, like, yeah, that's the theme for this character, or that's the theme for this thing. But then obviously I send all the ideas to the director as well to make sure. And sometimes I'll tell them I like this one the best, but a lot of times I won't because I want to see what they think. And a lot of times they're on the exact same page as me. But it's good to just kind of explore just starting out, and then you have your canvas for when you actually start writing to picture. I think quite a few composers do it that way.
I mean, it makes sense. I say that as someone who has never done that in my life, but
but it does make sense, right? There are times though where I think it was on Worry Dolls. I had done that process and thought I had come up with everything. And then partway through the movie, just on one scene, I got a new theme that I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then we all liked it. And then it ended up being used as like the main theme for the serial killer, I think, in the movie. And I had to go back and put it in to earlier cues.
This is going to be like a huge non sequitur leap, but I did notice that you have a film coming out, Butterfly and the Typewriter, about the author of A Confederacy of Dunces, John Kennedy Toole. Actually, I thought it was kind of interesting seeing that on your upcoming list, because I remember you talking to me about it really briefly, like 4 months ago after I'd read that book. It was just like a tweet that you had commented on.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, because
Yeah.
you said you loved the book. Yeah, yeah. And that's why I commented, because I was like, yeah. You were, did you say something about how it was sad that he committed suicide? Not to ruin the movie for anyone. Was that what your tweet was?
It was about how he'd committed suicide, but then
Yeah.
the
His
book gets
mom.
published, I don't know,
Yeah.
15 years later, and is just
Mm-hmm.
this huge success. But maybe if you want to read or if you want to watch the film, like, just stop listening to this.
Yes,
But
exactly. Turn it off now. If you don't know this real story, turn it off now.
but how the critiques and rejections that he'd had on that book
Mm-hmm.
are some of the things that pushed his spiral to depression that led to his suicide, and then ends up becoming this huge success. While it's inspiring all the work that his mom did to get that out there, it really made me sad seeing that that's what caused it. And that
Yeah.
had he been able to keep going, that he'd have actually been able to see it as a success, and it would have literally
Mm-hmm.
saved his life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. I think that there's a tale in that story. Like, don't give up. He thought he had something good, and he did, obviously. I'm sure you've read the book, right?
Yeah,
Confederacy of Dunces?
I don't normally like comedy in novels that often.
Mm-hmm.
Like, every time I read a review that's, oh, this book's laugh out loud funny, I'd read it and it's like, oh, maybe I'll have like a chuckle here or there, but that's it. It was, I loved that book. It was the funniest book I have ever read.
Oh yeah, it's hysterical. Yeah, and like you can envision. It's funny because to me, reading the book, it's like a Wes Anderson movie before there were Wes Anderson movies, right? Like
Yeah.
I know they've tried to make the book into a movie several times and it's like cursed or whatever. They've never been able to, but I'm like, if they could get Wes Anderson to direct it in his style, it's like so perfect. You know, all these little vignettes with these characters and they all come together. And but I mean, back to John Kennedy Toole's story, it is a testament that you just got to keep going and got to keep trying, because obviously he did have something brilliant, but the rejection was hard for him. I don't know if you've read the Butterfly and the Typewriter book by Corey
I haven't.
McLaughlin. Okay, so that's what the movie's based off of. It's about John's life, but I do think, from what I remember from his book, that there was maybe some mental illness. The rejection obviously didn't help and led to the depression and the suicide or whatever, but he may have been battling some other mental illness demons too. But it's interesting, and if you read the book too, right there, you know, he had a complicated relationship with his mother. That's what makes the story so interesting
Mm.
too. She was pretty overbearing, and he left a suicide note for her, but she never let anyone read it. We don't know what it said. I don't know if he blamed her, like nobody knows. But then the fact that she fought so hard to get his book published after he died, like it's just such an interesting story. So anyway, yeah, I've read the script from David Dubose, who wrote the script and is going to direct it, and you know, also a great friend and a filmmaker I've worked with several times, and it is so good. Like this story is just amazing, and the way he told it is amazing. Every time I've read it, like I'm just in tears by the end. I can't wait. I just think this is going to be a beautiful film and story for people to get to see.
I had no idea it was coming out before
Mm-hmm.
today. As a fan of the book and as someone who found his life really powerful too, it's definitely something I'm looking forward to.
Me too, obviously. Like as I said, from reading the script, like it's really beautifully told. I think it's going to be a powerful, emotional film for a lot of people. And if you don't know his story too, it's one of those ones that's tragic and inspiring all at the same time. It's going to be good.
Good. To finish on a nicer note, other than James Horner, who's your favorite film composer?
Oh wow. Well, do I have to pick just one?
No, just
Okay,
don't
a
list a
couple.
hundred.
Okay. I mean, obviously James Horner. I love Bernard Herrmann.
Mm.
Obviously, because I love horror. I love the old Alfred Hitchcock movies, and I love the Twilight Zone. Like I grew up watching the Twilight Zone. Reruns, of course. I'm not the original airings, but his scores for those I loved. Obviously John Williams. How can I not? Obviously, I like Hans Zimmer. I like Thomas Newman. There's so many. Yeah, there's lots of great people out there. But yeah, growing up, it was Horner and probably Zimmer and Newman that I grew up on, and
Hmm.
obviously Bernard Herrmann as well.
It's a good list, and I can't argue with any of them.
Yep, they're all great.
Yeah,
Yep.
and that's I don't want to like belabor the point, but I think that's what's so cool about this form. No matter what style you like or genre of film or music, there are so many talented people working today and just throughout the last 100 years, really, that there's just so much really good music out there, and
Yes.
there's music for anyone.
Yeah, which is really cool. Yeah, I love it too. It's just fun to be like, "Ooh, what did this person do? Oh, that's so cool." There's a wealth of great music out there, like you said.
And even if you just listen to like one composer, you hear Hans Zimmer's work over the last 10, 15 years, and then compare it to what he was doing in the 80s or 90s. It's just so different. Listen to like The Lion King and then Dunkirk back to back, and you're like,
Yeah.
whoa, how is this the same person?
Yeah, it is interesting how it changes, right? Like it's interesting how it morphs into something different. Like
Yeah.
what's the new cool thing now, But that is, like you said, that's what's interesting. And probably, fun for composers too, to get to experiment and try different things.
Well, yeah, I mean, and for you, as much as you obviously love doing horror, you have the opportunity to do all sorts of other things too.
Yeah, yeah, which I like. It's fun creatively to try different things. It is interesting. Like we get known for certain things, and I'm grateful because, like I said, I love horror, and it's nice that I'm actually known for something, as opposed to who is she, which I'm sure there's still a lot of that too. But like all of us have musical backgrounds and stuff, and we're all very diverse. We can write all kinds of different types of music, so it is fun to get to do that kind of stuff.
And like I said, from a listener's perspective, it's fun to hear. It's so fun
Mm-hmm.
hearing like not just the broad diversity, but a composer doing different things and
Yeah.
seeing someone's progression.
Like hearing a different take on it or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always think it'd be kind of interesting if there was like a composer, what would you call it? Like a composer Freaky Friday. Like if you had John Williams score a scene from Beetlejuice, because they're known for all these different things and
Right.
styles. But if we did that, how interesting would that be to hear someone known for a totally different style do a movie that someone else normally would do? I don't know. I
I
would
would
love
love
that.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, wouldn't
And
that be cool?
and so I think that would be so fun to hear
Mm-hmm.
like composers doing that. I mean, not the whole film, like you said, just
Like a
a given
scene or
scene. Yeah.
yeah, and then like put it on an album for us or something. And I mean, I'd love that. Like if they did that for charity or something, I'd be
Oh
all
yeah.
over that. Yeah, but it would just be really interesting. I don't know. I would totally love that.
I'll be honest. I think most people who like film music would be interested in that.
Yeah, well, there we go. Maybe we started a revolution and we could get enough people behind this to make it happen.
Hope so. That'd be a lot of fun. Well, Holly, I really appreciate you joining me. It's been a fun chat, and it's Saturday morning for you still right now. So
Yep.
have a great rest of the day and a great rest of the weekend.
Well, thank you. I will be working like most composers do on the weekends, but I enjoy it. So there we go.
Good. All right.
Awesome. Well, I hope you enjoy your weekend too.